Maya Brooks sat there in the first-class cabin of the flight from New York to Los Angeles, amidst the quiet luxury. She was a peaceful figure in the hustle and bustle of life. The soft lights reflected off the table in front of her, where she opened a luxurious black leather handbag. Opening the bag, she took out a thin folder, filled with the final adjustments for an important speech the next morning. This was a speech on justice and human dignity. A topic that Maya had spent a month researching, understanding every corner of it. Because every word in this speech would have to be an affirmation of strength, of courage and aspiration for a fair world. She sat alone, in a space of peace, but in her heart perhaps only she knew, this was the third time that day she felt tired. Tired from the never-ending worries, from the responsibility that was attached to her name and life. A phone lay still in her pocket, but the notifications kept coming. That was the responsibility of a woman in modern society, an influential judge. Maya had witnessed enough abuse and injustice, and now, every word she said, every decision she made had undeniable weight. Time seemed to pass in her thoughts, when a sudden slight thirst appeared, reminding her that she had not had anything to drink since early morning. The rush of flights never left enough time for a leisurely breakfast. She pressed the call button for the flight attendant, gently but still full of seriousness. The way she ordered, not showing power, but a simple, calm request, like any other request in a busy day. A moment later, flight attendant Jenna Cole appeared, walking confidently but lacking in warmth. She was a middle-aged woman with neatly curled blonde hair and sharp eyes that scanned the crowd as if she had seen many people before, and it was all part of the job. As she approached Maya, Jenna didn't seem in any hurry, but that only made the atmosphere heavier, as if the wait were a subtle threat. Maya, still calm and polite, gently opened her mouth. "Please, can I have a glass of water?" Jenna paused, not rushing to answer. She glanced at Maya, then slowly curled her lips, a smile that Maya could sense the hidden irony in. Without a moment's delay, Jenna raised her head, letting the sound of her refusal resound, deliberately loud, as if every gaze in the cabin had to stop and listen clearly. "I'm sorry, but I can't serve you right now," Jenna said, each word seeming to be spelled out clearly, defiantly. The cabin instantly fell silent, a tense atmosphere filling every corner. The surrounding passengers, as a natural reaction, were all silent and averted their eyes, seemingly not wanting to clarify this tense situation further. Maya could clearly feel every passing glance, the silent judgment of those sitting nearby. It was not a sympathetic or sharing look. Instead, there was a heavy silence, as if everyone knew, but no one dared to speak up. Maya felt the cold in Jenna's words, but it wasn't just the coldness of her tone. It was a coldness that penetrated to the core, the kind of unspoken judgment one never wanted to face. It was not a pleasant feeling. She looked around, not wanting to let this injustice continue. But in the cabin, no one spoke up, no one dared to take her side. All Maya could do was hold herself together, fight the humiliation that rose in her chest. Nothing was said. Maya showed no anger, no signs of anxiety or confusion. She sat there, working on her speech for tomorrow morning's conference on justice and human dignity, a topic that, at this moment, served as a reminder of the calm she still had to maintain. But even so, there was one thing Maya couldn't control. Her hands shook slightly as she put the phone down. It wasn't a tremor of fear, but something else, as if everything she had endured in her years in the judiciary was being brought up, not in words, but in this silence. A silent war she was forced to fight. With a smooth motion, she texted her assistant, Noah Reed. "Situation in first class, refusing basic courtesy. Suggest immediate review." The message was short, simple, but it contained so much. Everything had been noted. Everything had been communicated. Now there was only silence. She put the phone down on the table and returned to her work, her gaze still steadfast as if nothing could shake her. From outside, the sounds of the cabin continued to fill the air. The leather seats creaked under each step, as if the tension in the air had been compressed to the point of making a sound. The people around her remained silent, their eyes averted, no one daring to look directly at her. The atmosphere seemed to become more and more stifling, heavier, as if cold currents of air were seeping into every corner of the cabin. The loudspeaker crackled from above, not announcing anything important, just meaningless noise. Maya paid no attention to it, because in that moment, she knew that nothing but this silence could reflect the truth. A battle that no one could see, but she could clearly feel every step it took, every trace it left on her body, even though she didn't let anyone see it. She sat there, with all her composure, but in her heart, Maya felt that this was only the beginning. Thousands of miles away, in a glass conference room with gray curtains in a downtown skyscraper, James Carter, the CEO with gray hair and sharp eyes, had just finished an afternoon meeting when an urgent text message lit up on his phone. Without a second's hesitation, he leaned over and read the brief, chilling text from his assistant Noah. Denied water in first class. Intentional. Alert, James. James didn't need to ask. His experience told him this was no small misunderstanding, but a matter of grave principle, especially when it came to Maya Brooks, a woman whom James respected not only as a distinguished federal judge, but also as a living symbol of dignity and justice that his entire firm worshipped. Without a frown or a word of complaint, James picked up his phone and quickly typed a series of messages. A team of senior staff was dispatched to the destination airport, a team that included the HR director, the head of customer service, and the legal counsel, none of whom could afford to delay. They had to be at the gate, ready to deal with what James knew would not end well. Not stopping there, James directly contacted the flight crew chief. A call without embellishment, without beating around the bush. His voice was deep and firm like an order. Request to meet the entire flight crew immediately upon landing, especially Jenna Cole. I want a written explanation before passengers leave the plane. Outside the large glass windows of the office, the city still glowed with warm yellow lights, as if all was well in the world. But inside, the gears of justice had begun to turn, silently and irresistibly, in a way that the reckless never expected. As the plane touched down on the runway, the entire business-class cabin shook a low rhythm, then fell into an atmosphere of waiting silence. Announcements rang out over the loudspeakers, but no one seemed to be in the mood to listen to the familiar greetings. A flight attendant walked quickly to Maya Brooks, her voice soft but not hiding her tension. Miss Brooks, please disembark first. Someone is waiting for you at the door. Maya folded her speech, put it in her bag, and stood up, graceful but unhurried. As she walked down the aisle, eyes met hers, one by one, some apprehensive, some remorseful, and here and there some excited, as if they had just realized they had been silent for too long about something so obviously wrong. At the exit, where the airport lights glinted off the deck, James Carter stood waiting. He wore a gray suit and a dark blue tie, his face unable to hide its seriousness. Behind him, the senior staff lined up in a silent line, their ID badges gleaming on their chests like invisible pledges of responsibility and justice. As Maya stepped out, James Carter bowed to her, a small, neat gesture, but one that carried a weight of respect that no words could quite convey. Maya nodded slightly in return, her eyes devoid of anger, only the calm of someone who had seen through people in their most trying moments. Jenna Cole was called. She stepped off the plane, her face ashen, her curly blonde hair tangled with stress. There was no trace of her cold smile or her earlier arrogance. There was only a small woman standing alone in the hallway, facing a reality more stark than any judgment. The remaining passengers, who had once turned a blind eye, now whispered to each other in small talk, feeble excuses just to cover up the nameless guilt that was tightening the atmosphere around them. And in that moment, power passed silently. Not with a shout, not with a bang, but with the proud silence of a woman who chose to stand her ground, and with the silent bow of a system that knew that this time, justice must be called by its proper name. What began with a refused glass of water quickly spread like an irresistible ripple across a calm pond. News of the discrimination against Maya Brooks, a respected judge, flooded online newspapers, social media, and morning news. In less than 24 hours, the image of Jenna Cole, her face tense and her eyes uncertain at the airport, became the focal point of a wave of public outrage that had been simmering for a long time. No threats, no loud protests, just the silent weight of facts forced the airline corporation to act. An emergency meeting was held that night, in a discreet room covered in green carpet, where phones rang incessantly, where laptops lit up with screens recorded every line of strategic adjustments. Just 2 days later, the airline held a formal press conference. In front of dozens of television cameras and bright lights, the CEO publicly apologized to Maya Brooks, to all passengers, and especially to the silent people who had been treated unfairly without anyone seeing it. They went beyond words and announced a series of sweeping reforms. The flight attendant training program was rewritten from the ground up, with a focus on dignity, fairness, and unconditional respect for each passenger. Jenna Cole, who once coldly refused a glass of water, as if refusing another person their dignity, was fired immediately. Her name appeared in the newspapers as a warning, as clear evidence that, in this era, even the smallest acts of discrimination will not escape the light of justice. But what remains in the hearts of those who follow this story is not just punishment. It is a quiet belief, a belief that if just one person is brave enough to stand up in the storm, the whole system will change. 6 months later, on a late autumn afternoon, the old courtroom that had witnessed so many important decisions was now as quiet as if it were holding its breath. No hammering, no arguments, only the quiet twilight falling on the rows of dark wooden benches, each thin streak of light, like a trace of time slowly imprinted on the space that was so familiar to Maya Brooks. Today was the 25th anniversary of her donning the judge's robes, but as per her request, there would be no party, no congratulatory speeches. Maya just wanted to sit here alone, in pure silence, listening to her heart's voice as memories and the present intertwined like deep, underground currents. Noah Reed, his loyal assistant, stepped in softly, placing a small gift box wrapped in simple brown paper on the wooden table in front of Maya. Without a word, without breaking the silence she cherished, he simply bowed his head and left, leaving her with the mysterious gift and the golden light that enveloped the room like a warm shawl. Maya opened the box, her hands slowly, as if touching something sacred. Inside, a small photo frame appeared. The moment she stepped off the flight that day, her face calm but her eyes burning all the injustice around her. Below the photo, the delicately engraved words on the silver plate made her eyes sting for a moment. The silence you taught more than words ever could. The silence she kept was not out of helplessness, nor out of fear, but because she understood that sometimes steadfast silence has a deeper power than any words. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes gently closed, letting the late afternoon light embrace her, as a silent acknowledgement that the long, lonely journey she had been through, with so many challenges, so many doubtful looks, so many silent judgments, was finally being understood. And in the corner of the room, the empty chair caught the last rays of sunlight, like a silent but steadfast symbol of a life lived, fought, and never surrendered. Maya Brooks sat there, not smiling, not needing applause or empty cheers. What she felt now was something deeper, a stillness forged over the years, a silence not of submission but of a soul that had weathered the storm. In that moment, time seemed to stop. There was no past or future, only the pure present. Only her heart beating slowly but strongly in the atmosphere filled with silent echoes. She stood up, moving slowly as if cherishing every last moment in the room that had been hers for nearly half her life. Not looking for the spotlight, not seeking glory under the watchful eyes, Maya walked out of the courtroom straight into real life, where there was no stage, no audience, only herself, intact as in the beginning and a long road ahead. The light of faith in those proud eyes never fading. And at the threshold between light and darkness, Maya Brooks stopped, standing tall in the midst of the flowing time. Like a silent but resounding declaration, I carry silence not as surrender, but as strength. I am unbroken and I endure. Without screaming, without fighting, just with her calm presence, Maya reminds the world that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in the noise, but in daring to be present. Daring to witness, and daring to stand tall, even when no one is on your side.